Welcome. This is episode 58 of the Dance to Oneness podcast. This week, I have my beautiful friend and co-facilitator, coach, and a mindset coach. Oh my God, I don't actually even know how to introduce you, Emily. I should have
like what title? I don't know. Lately, I've been saying I'm an intuitive coach and breathwork facilitator.
Yeah. And you're so much more than that. So that's why it's hard to put a title on you. So my friend, some of you might know her. Some of you might your first time being introduced to Emily Russell, who is an international facilitator. She has, oh my God, been able to help so many people with not just their businesses, but also their bodies. And Emily's Emily's an incredible reflection of bringing it all in. Like, you're like my favorite person to like research and read into something and study it and then like explain it to me and like how it works. Like, your brain just works like that. So I love how you study both bottom up approaches and bottom down approaches. And today we'll talk about that. And we're going to talk about beyond the mind. So the embodied path to effortless transformation. I think we both have experienced it ourselves and seen it with clients, people who are really big into change and transformation, but it seems to be the longer they're in it, the harder it is. They get stuck in their mind, they get stuck in modalities, they get stuck in different ways, and they can't seem to really just create transformation from ease.
Yeah. I love, and thank you for that, the intro. I realized, I've been fascinated with the body for as long as I can remember. Like, I was, always been a science nerd. I studied biology in college. I taught biology, was a yoga teacher, facilitated access consciousness classes for many years, body work, like energy work. I've always been fascinated by it, right? And to me, the through line is my target is always to get people back to this innate intelligence and wisdom that is in all of us and our bodies, which is much faster, much more direct than anything that's up in the mind, in our conscious mind. That's how we're designed. Like our conscious mind, I think it takes in 40 to 50, I forget, like megabits or something of information a second, but our body takes in millions. It's designed that way, right? And it can't take the time to think logically about things. The body receives sensory information. It's why we talk about, that's my gut instinct, or I just know, right? But we have this beautiful conscious mind that allows us to do all of these other things, like, think and problem solve and plan. And we can easily, when I think in the realm of like growth and personal development, a lot of times we find this area, one from curiosity of like, wow, like what else is possible? But also usually we have something we're kind of like, I'd maybe really like to fix this. Like, I'd like to fix this with my body, or this with my relationships, or this with money. And when you go in and stay in that angle, we get stuck. It's very easy for our mind to try to start figuring out, well, what's the best thing? Or if I do this modality, is this better than this? Or if I do this, and the more complex something is, the more we see something as, well, that must be really like it's a level of authority or expertise, because we're kind of like, well, if that's complex, it must really be a good thing, right? And our mind wants to try to figure it out and plan things. So it's really easy to get a little stuck trying to find the next thing to fix, rather than, great, let's repair and heal things. But if we go in from an angle of expansion and the simplicity of like, what intelligence already lives within my body and my nervous system, like our autonomic nervous system, which think automatic, it's going on all the time. It's what's like letting you digest your food without having to think about it, and your heartbeat and your temperature and your breath. And it's the most intelligent, amazing healer there is. Like, we're actually designed to completely heal ourselves when we're in a state of the nervous system called parasympathetic, which is it's like relax and repair. You know, if we were about to get eaten by a saber-toothed tiger, how much of your energy would you like available to run away from the tiger? 100%, right? So we're designed that way. So when there's a threat, and that's great when we had saber-toothed tigers in our environment, right? Right now we don't. And so we all know, like, I don't know, right now I have like 30 tabs open on my computer. My mind's aware of all that, right? It's like, okay, there's a lot there. Opening a bill, having an argument with a partner, a stress somewhere, traffic. And so what's happening is this really intelligent system that's also ancient, so it's wired differently to keep us safe, is now reading things in our environment and thinking they're saber-toothed tigers and going, oh, 100% of my energy needs to go to my body and my muscles to get me out of here to fight.
Mhm.
And so it's so interesting. Like, if you look in our society, what happens then is if the energy is going there, your body has to divert it from somewhere. So it diverts it from the immune system, from digestion, from like higher level thinking. So think about how often we hear people like, I've experienced, like, I don't know, I'm kind of confused, brain fog. I'm not remembering things as much. All the digestion things, all of the autoimmune diseases that we're like, I don't know. It's so interesting. So our body can really heal, and it can be simple. And there's all these embodied techniques that almost to our brain wants to go, that seems too easy. Because if I really just have to sit and breathe or move my body, and I don't do it, I also have to be accountable for that, which is kind of threatening. Whereas if there's this whole big complex system and there's like a million tools that might be the thing that's wrong with me, and I can sit and figure it out and try to like clear and do all of this, then I'm not as like, I don't know, maybe I just didn't get the right one. And now I've invested all this time into this system and this complexity, which my brain loves. And if I just came back to something really basic, like breathing or meditating, it's called like the sunk loss theory. Like, once we invest a lot of time into something or a system and it's complex, we're like, well, I shouldn't pull out now because I invested a lot in that. But there's a simplicity that you can like return to and add into and still like use what works. But it's this, when we return to this like incredible knowledge that's in our body in different embodied ways, we get to, it's sustainable, it's easy, and we get to cut out a lot of this extra work if it's not useful, if it's not effective, you know. And I think we've all been like, I've definitely been there, like in a loop of doing a lot of work, or a lot of thinking, or trying to figure something out. And it's not changing, you know, which is frustrating.
Yeah. Well, yeah, and it's that that you actually get burnt out by, you know, you're constantly in this trying to in the healing world. There's actually like this burnout where you're
Yeah.
constantly seeking the next thing. Or, you know, I just spoke to someone today about it. Like, she was looking for a clearing for anxiety, and I was like, there isn't a clearing for anxiety, you know, like I never had a clearing change my anxiety. However, I will say I had things short term that helped me with anxiety. So if I had anxiety and I'd go off and do yoga, or if I had anxiety and I'd go off and do some energy work, I would feel good for a short space of time, but it never actually healed my nervous system long term. It never actually got to the root of what was there. And it was only when I started to really work with my nervous system and take a more somatic approach. And soma is like living, it's with the body. It's really working with the body and with sensation. And I'm lucky in that I've always had an embodied movement practice. And the embodied movement practice is somatic. And so that always gave me that kind of like sense of dropping out of my head and into my body, and brought me back to sensation with my body. But what I was doing in my life, how I was living my life every day, being on the computer every day, overworking, pushing, like constantly going, my system, my nervous system was in a constant state of fight or flight. And I didn't know it. And I was overriding my system all the time. I was living with anxiety and overriding it and not listening to my body and not really. And the most incredible thing was like, okay, yeah, I could go off and do energy work or go do yoga and I would feel good for a little bit, but it never really changed it. And what actually changed it for me were these practices that you talk about, the most simple, the easiest, like breath work, like slowing down, like taking breaks in my day, taking intervals, resting, like all these like really simple practices. And was all these small micro changes in my day, small micro adjustments that actually started to heal my nervous system. So it, of course, my mind was like, how is this going to change it? Like I remember even at the beginning, certain things like being able to like, understand how my thoughts were triggering my body. And like this example you gave where your mind is reading your environment as a threat to you. And even just having that knowledge alone was enough to really start shifting things for me and realizing, wow, like, okay, I right now I'm reading, the computer is a threat to me. My phone was a threat to me. Like it was,
my phone was a big one. Like
Yeah.
the amount of messages, I'd be like, oh my God, I don't want to look at my phone. But you're like, your body's responding to that all the time.
Yeah. And you're overriding it. Like
Yeah,
waking up in the morning, the first thing I pick up is my phone rather than like those, like that's the micro changes for me was like, okay, turn my phone on airplane mode at night. Don't put it on for the first hour in the morning. Get up, make my tea, sit and meditate. In other words, just sit in silence for 10, 15 minutes, do my energy healing work on myself, connect with spirit, connect with source, write out some intentions. If I do that for like 7 minutes in my morning before I get to the phone, before I check the messages, before I go into like, everyone else's world, all those small little changes were what really changed my system.
Yeah.
So there wasn't like any like big clearing or big like energy modality that changed anxiety for me. I had to learn to self-soothe my own system, and I had to learn to drop and listen to my body. And even in moments where I would get dysregulated and activated or hyperactivated, right? And my heart would be palpitating. It was okay, how do I come back to sensation in my body? How much of this can I feel into? Can I breathe into? And all those little increments, like we call it titration, where you titrate the nervous system, you titrate it back to a sense of ease and calm and peace. All of that led to like me having such a calmer system.
And I love you talking about that. And there's a couple things that I want to, because that's little bits at a time is really key. But notice like when you're talking, what I love is your nervous system, your body, and all of you listening, right? Everyone is so different. It says just like we all have different fingerprints. We all have, it's how our nervous system is. It's this beautiful, it's shows where we've been. It's like it's collected all this information your whole life. And so why would yours be like, you have to go at it from what is my body feeling and what feels good to me, right? So when you mention anxiety and like going, that's the like hyper regulated, right? And that's where I very much was too. And let me tell you, I really truly didn't know it. Like just like you said, when we live a certain way for long enough, it's comfortable. And once it's comfortable and you're used to picking up your phone first thing and you're used to traveling every other week or you're used to sitting in your computer 10 hours, because you kept choosing it and you've moved towards it, you've told your body that it's safe, because we don't run towards a saber-toothed tiger, right? So we do that enough and it's comfortable. And so literally when we we override, not consciously, our nervous system, but we start doing it because we keep taking those actions. And like you said, it's great then to have like some practices that help, right? But you're not ever really going into that whole load that's created that, oh my gosh, I'm super regulated. And some of us will go in the other direction. Whereas if you tend to feel more like, I don't want to do anything, or lean more towards depression and I don't want to move, that's just, it's hypo-regulation in the other direction. We don't consciously choose that. Our bodies responded with, it's a reaction to, wow, this is a lot going on. And so I like to think of like the math of it. Like you said, it was these little shifts, like having your phone on do not disturb and taking time. And it's, if you think about it, one of my favorite analogies was with meditation, but this would apply to anything, like anything silence and stillness and quiet. It could be breath work. It could be yoga, like anything that brings you to your body and you're not like connected to a bazillion other things. But if you think in a day, if we pick up, let's say 12 units of stress, triggers, threats, just because we live here, right? And we're that. And let's say sleep, which is amazing, like takes away 9 of those. So if we don't have anything else in our lives, every day we're adding on, we're not getting rid of 3 units of stress, right? They're piling up and the next day would be 6. So if I do something like a little bit, like I go, and even let's say I meditate once a day, maybe that takes away 3 units. At least now I'm like not adding anything in. But notice we're still not getting down into the residual. And so we've all been living in this world, in this culture for a long time. So I love the idea of like little bits add up. So if I maybe meditate once and then I add breath work, or I have a yoga, like I'm doing something in small bits, but at maybe like work them into your routine. Like when I wake up, I do this. And before I go to bed, I do this. Then all of a sudden it's like, oh, I picked up 12 units of stress, but I'm sleeping off 9. And I got rid of 3, like when I was meditating, I got another rid of 3 when I was like moving or doing breath work. And now you are actually getting down to the root and you're healing your nervous system and your body and the stuff that's there. And as you do that, I think you and I can both speak to this. It's a healing process because you're actually getting to stuff that you've been like, I'm just going to like put that to the side or clear to kind of ignore it. And then all of a sudden when you're really present with just your body, you get to go, oh, wow, that thing has been there. Okay. Now I feel like, okay, I feel resourced enough to let it come up and move it out. And then it's like gone.
Yeah. And that's where you build up the capacity to be able to, process the earlier trauma, the things that were there before that are just unresolved, right? What I love about a somatic approach, and I don't know if any of you have read like The Body Keeps the Score, which is really that's where a lot of the somatics teachings come from. And with the somatic approach, like you actually don't have to go in and talk about the trauma again. In actual fact, a lot of that is re-traumatizing someone. And it comes back to like you just give your mind something else to problem solve, and it doesn't really change the trauma. Like the trauma is a sensation that just hasn't been resolved. And what resolves it is you being able to be resourced enough to allow that sensation to be worked through in your system, right? And when you resource yourself and you are like you said, and you have all these practices in your day, and you're able to self-soothe your own system, and you're not looking outside of you for the next modality or the next clearing, you're able to actually work through those sensations. Now, having a therapist or a facilitator or someone who can hold space for you and guide you along that way is also really beneficial. Like I had someone who worked with me with a very somatic approach, and that was really helpful for me because I was so used to problem solving, and I was so used to being like, oh, okay, I have this sadness. in my heart, I know why it is. I know where it came from. I know where it began. So I had all the stuff that my mind had problem solved. But I did when I worked through the stuff on a somatic, on a nervous system level, I realized how much the mind was a way to protect myself from feeling the sensations in my body and working through them on a cellular level. So I for someone like I was prided myself in being very connected to my body. And when I started working somatically, like really in depth somatically, I was like, oh, I actually really love to go up into my head and problem solve
Yeah.
and avoid sensation. And I really, and she, you know, the person that was working with me really had to keep bringing me back to my body and to the sensation, because I so wanted to give the problem solving theory I had, because I'm very smart and I'm able to like
Yeah.
see patterns and connect things. But what I learned from that process was it didn't matter where the pain in my heart came from, or the pain in my body, or how much I could track it back to childhood. That didn't change it. What changed it was allowing myself to feel the sensations, and then building the capacity to have sensation. And again, it was so simple. I won't say it was easy, because it was actually kind of challenging for me to feel sensation, because again, I so wanted to go into my mind, but it was such an easier process, and it's such a simple process that you do want to dismiss it.
Yeah.
And I've done some somatic training and EMDR and different things like that, and I really wanted to dismiss the practice because it was too simple.
Yeah. Yeah. And isn't that it? And once you understand why the mind wants to dismiss that, it makes sense, right? If I can keep things complex and think about them, it gives our mind wants to do that. Like it wants to figure things out, and it can be so uncomfortable. And think about it, like when you say, like when you feel resourced to like feel those things, it's just about your body needs to feel safe. And how could it feel safe if we've been in constant alert mode, not knowing it, but just from the way we've been living our lives, and we're constantly feeding in not safe, not safe. Well, if my body doesn't feel, my nervous system doesn't feel safe, this is not cognitive, this is your body, right? Then it's not going to want to, who wants to be down in here? If this does not feel safe and everything's on like high alert, whether we know it or not, like we're not going to want to, nor feel okay to go, that thing that happened like a long time ago, I don't want to look at that right now. Like nothing, it's not even conscious. It just avoid it.
Well, it's like we're actually totally willing to talk about it. That's what I find, like even with my clients, and I don't know if you have a similar thing, and where your clients are really smart and they're really intelligent and they've been in the transformational world for a while, and they're able to tell you why it is they have this thing, where it comes from. They're able to see all the patterns. They're like very smart, right? But it's like your mind has incredible introspection, right? But it's like, oh, but that is actually what I'm doing to avoid being present with the sensation, and the sensation just wants to be felt, and it wants to be felt because it just wants to be moved and to actually complete the process. But we think we're going to complete the process by talking about it and understanding it and problem solving, but no, we complete the process by actually feeling the sensations. And it's so crazy. Like when I was first asked, like, well, what's the sensation like? And I have a similar experience with my clients now also, when I'm saying like, okay, how is this sensation? How does it feel? And we're like, we call sensations emotions. We're like, well, I feel angry, or it feels angry, or whatever. Like that's not actually a sensation, that's an emotion, you know, like sensation. So it's like, wow, like we actually are avoiding sensation so much. And it's so amazing, because our birthright is actually to be embodied and to experience pleasure. That's our birthright. And when we have a lot of this pain, these sensations, these intense sensations, they're just trying to get our attention. When we actually are able to like create this capacity to feel sensation, underneath all that is a lot of pleasure.
So true.
So we're actually avoiding pleasure. That's what we're really avoiding.
Yeah.
We're avoiding the pain, which underneath the pain is a lot of pleasure.
Yeah. And the pain, and I think there's a big difference between pain, like the actual, and suffering. Because the suffering is like, I think it was, I'm sure there's been multiple scientists that have looked at this, but Jill Boyle, she was a neuroscientist that actually had a stroke and like lost one like activity in one side of her brain. She's fascinating, but she proved that a feeling or sensation, an emotion, can process in 90 seconds through the body if we don't attach a story or a meaning or a narrative to it, but that it actually does require to be metabolized and processed out, right? But it can be that fast. And like you said, it's so interesting to be like, wow, but we don't even want to go there. So they just get stored and stored and stored and stored. But if we can just not attach the suffering and the story to it and feel like resourced enough, and it's not wrong. Like, of course there's this here. Like if there's a contraction or there's even an emotion like anger. Okay, let's let it out. And then underneath it's like, then all there's those wonderful pleasures that.
And so, when you're doing, like, because obviously you've trained as a breathwork facilitator now, and that's been a big part of you, healing your nervous system and then helping other people. How do you find breathwork like helps people? How does breathwork break through the resistance in people's mind and the wanting to stay up here in the story?
Yeah, well, one thing I love about it is if you've ever tried to meditate and you find that difficult, like sitting still, which I which I know for me, like I do breath work first, and I always had a hard time with meditation for sitting. Breath work is great because it gives your mind something to do. You're actually thinking about a breath pattern. Then your all the receptors in your belly. So when you breathe and breath work into your belly, you're activating, there's a nerve called the vagus nerve that runs from the gut to the brain, and it's your biggest nerve, and it's a super highway of information, right? And so when we breathe into the belly, one, we're feeding direct information into the nervous system that it's okay to relax and be safe, because we don't belly breathe normally when we're scared. Think of it, we're like, we're up here. And so we're like reverse engineering it and going, okay, everything in my environment, I might be in traffic, I might have had a fight today, I might be stressed about money, but I'm going to actually take some few minutes here and give my body and nervous system different information. And so like belly breathing does that, and any awareness. So we start switching the conversation and switching. So it's easier because you can relax and you can lay down and you can sit up, but your brain has something to go, okay, I'm going to inhale through my nose and I'm going to exhale through my mouth. And maybe you add counting. So you're like, okay, I like to count. That'll give my mind something to do. But it immediately brings you into the body, and it's the bridge between your unconscious and conscious mind, because it's the one part of our nervous system that runs automatically, right? Normally throughout the day, you don't have to think about breathing, but when you consciously choose a breath pattern, that's all breath work is. It's like, I'm going to consciously choose how to breathe and put my awareness on it for 10 breaths, 5 breaths, a few minutes, an hour. But because we're adjusting that, it's the one part of that autonomic, that intelligent system that we can go in and tinker with and go, okay, actually, it's okay to switch into healing mode. Because that's the thing, when we're in fight or flight, we're not in healing mode. And we can switch out of it. Even for breaths, we're adding in. Did I just go off track? I forget what the original question was.
No, okay. It's wonderful. And I think just like, mentioning like, okay, I can't meditate. It's hard for me to sit still. Why? Because your mind is so busy. We all understand that one. So finding things that help you offload your nervous system, offload the stress, offload the triggers. And breath work is one of them. And you mentioned movement as well. And that's how I found movement. Like I found movement, conscious movement, conscious movement being there's no form and structure to the movement. You literally are facilitated to drop out of your head into your body, feel how your body wants to move, and move from your intuition and from your feeling, like, oh, my neck is tight, let me move that. Oh, my shoulders, let me feel into that. So it's not like I'm following what the teacher says, I'm literally feeling into my body. And that is a somatic healing practice, because you're bringing awareness to sensation in your body as you are in breathwork. I've done breathwork sessions with you, and I love that you're trauma informed, number one, because I think that's so important, because so many people have bad experiences with breathwork or movement too, because I know you had some bad experience with movement. And I was like, when you told me about it, I'm like, no, that's not how it's supposed to be done. It all came back to the facilitators were not trauma informed. And so when you're not trauma informed, what you can do is you end up pushing people beyond like what their system can do. Example with breathwork would be like sometimes people being in these breathwork sessions that are hyperventilating their systems. Like that is not trauma informed. That is not listening to your own body. And I, with the movement, it's also like creating a space where people are able to like drop out of their heads into their body. You're not forcing them to do things that they don't want to do. You're not pushing them into uncomfortable like things with partner work. Like it's really like you're creating a space where people can actually feel safe enough to be able to feel down into their bodies and feel the sensations. And when I did the breathwork with you, and I continue to do breathwork with you because you have a beautiful breathwork membership, what I got to see was like, again, it was like, oh my God, there's all these sensations here. And I've been like, especially if in your day you're really busy, and I had like things going on and relationship triggers coming up. And like there was a few times I did breath work with you, and I would just like breathe down, and you'd maybe give me some cues, like just breathe into what's there, what's asking to be felt, what's asking to be, sensed. And I would feel it, and I'd be like, oh, there's a lot here.
Yeah.
It's just like there's a lot of sensation, and I've been avoiding it, or I've been too busy just to breathe into it. And it's very similar with the movement. It's like, oh, there's like sensation here, and I just need to move it. And it's like you said, it's like emotion is energy in motion. It's a wave. And yes, you will have anger, but it's energy in motion, but it gets stuck when you don't allow it to move. And movement, that's why I love conscious movement, because it like it allows you to have the sensation and let the sensation move, whether it's anger, whether it's frustration, whether it's, grief, like whatever is there, you can move the sensation. And it's the same with the breath work. They are very simple, also pretty ancient practices that are free.
That are free. Isn't that interesting? Like, and it's like we're remembering that the access to the things that we've always had here since we've been on the planet, right? And it's just remembering to use them and experience them. And it can be that simple, but we've always had access to these. And it's so funny. It's like I was watching a documentary, and they were talking about, and I didn't realize this, but this makes sense. When medicine began, like modern medicine, they viewed the body through different, like, whether it was like Descartes and Darwin, and it was like, here's a system, right? It's kind of like a machine. And it was based on Newtonian physics, which now we have quantum physics, right? So we can talk about the different, but Newtonian physics, it's like everything's a machine. So there's parts you're working with, right? And so if something breaks, you got to go into the machine and fix it. But it was missing what humans, ancient cultures have known forever. There's actually things we can't see with our physical energy, right? That's influencing this whole system of our body all the time, and our nervous system. And quantum physics and energetics understands that, right? And now finally, that's why people are like, oh, what meditation, people can heal with this, and breath work, and these ancient energy medicine, and there's so much out there, right? But now it's because there's an understanding of course, we're more than this like physical body that we see. There's all these other parts. So getting to use all of that's available to us for free.
Yeah. Yeah. And information is powerful. So when you become educated about your nervous system and how it works, and your body, and how your mind is affecting your body, and you're even like you talking at the beginning about how your subconscious mind, reads things as a threat to try and keep you safe. When you start to understand that, it actually changes, your whole world, because you're like, okay, now I understand what's actually going on,
Yeah. And then you're not fighting against yourself. Like, of course your mind is busy. Of course you're like it's kind of like thank God the nervous system's primary function is to keep you alive. Like, that's wonderful. And when we understand it, and that's why when you mentioned trauma informed, what that just means is choice. Like, you letting your body make the choices, and you make the choices. I mean, we've all been in, I know I have been in, whether it's been a movement class, an energy session, I tend to be a high achiever, right? And so I will push myself in lots of different ways. If I don't ask, like before I realized this, you can push yourself into things that your system isn't ready for. Your body's not ready for it. Your mind might be like, I really want to get the most out of this session. I really want to get the most out of this class. I can do it. And you can willpower yourself and throw yourself into the deep end, which I've done many times. Now, sometimes I was very much ready for it, and my system, it was expansive and it was great. And that's why, even the breath work that can be very intense, when you're in a space for that and your system's ready, it's amazing. It's individual. And so it really is this beginning of relearning our system and not letting our mind go, I can do that. That would be good if I had the biggest change right now. And your body's going, could you just really slow it down for me, or whatever your message is, right? I was surprised to my body did not want to. When I started doing breath work regularly, it would not, I would try to speed it up, and it was this is not. And I was like, really? But it seems like I could get this really cool result, and the tingling, and if I just went faster, my body was like, no, we've been doing that for years. And the I can't explain the healing that's gone. It's just been it's so different. But it isn't the high, it's different. You don't get these big highs and yes, I did this and I changed it. Oh my God. It's not that. It's this very different, peaceful, sustainable, fulfilled, rich shift.
Yeah.
It's very different. I don't know how to put
it. Yes, I had this similar experience. I feel like we could talk about nervous system healing all day long. But I would love just to I've mentioned the breathwork membership you have. So if people are looking for okay, I would like more support in working this way on a more, on a different way, you have the breathwork membership that's available to still join, correct?
Yeah. And I also have a free breathwork session too, that I just sent out also to everybody on my mailing list. So if you guys have never been to my website, you can go to EmilyEvansRussell.com, or same on Instagram, go there, and there's some links to a free breath session. My membership is ongoing. We do sessions a month. And I have a podcast where sometimes I actually do explain different breath techniques, and it's different, of course, to have a guided session, but my target is really to empower people with these things of hey, let me guide you, but I'm not doing it for you. I'm here. I will guide you to your own wisdom in your body. And then you get to keep taking it off into your world, Yeah. And that's why, Aim, you and I we led a retreat back in November in Costa Rica, and we're having another one called the Embodied Woman in Bali in September. And I think a lot of that is, like you said, we could talk about this all day. because I think we've found so much transformation from using the body's wisdom and how quick it is and how different. And I don't want to say quick. It's the knowing we can have with our body can be instantaneous, and then we can choose which way we're doing, like, and how to heal and what everything. So that's really why, like, I know I've tended to like expand it on the breath work. You really like have such a gift with also breath work and that embodied movement, because again, it's when you get to do that also in a group, there's a thing that goes on in a group container. Like, my membership is online, same thing, but man, in person too. We get to benefit from what all of us are, the energy we all are, and the transformation we're all going through. Yeah.
Yeah, I love that. I also have a free chakra movement series on my website, so you can check that out. And then I have an ongoing chakra movement online as well. And I do love to have the online support. I love having like the monthly breathwork classes with you, Emily. And then I love also that we get together in person. There is a different energy when we're all in person and we're in nature. We have the body work, we have the breath work, we have the movement, we have the healthy food. And we're just like, and you have that for like 7 days straight in Bali. It's like, oh, you just can't not change,
I know. Well, you're adding, look, if you think of it, so we're adding levels of support for your body and for your nervous system to feel safe to transform. So like you have the earth in Bali, right? That we feel that support, the land, the people, right? And then when you're on a retreat, and Amy and I like we're there to create the space and make it comfortable and know that you are like, that's a level of relational safety and support that allows us to transform and process and go through these changes when we have that, right? So, and you have the group and the land and the connection to universe. Like when we have that, it enables us to have these big transformations from a very different place of, wow, I'm supported enough and my body feels safe enough to do this. And that's where sustainable, lasting change that almost feels effortless begins, because it's coming from a different starting place of feeling supported, of feeling safe, of your body going, yeah, this is what I want.
Yeah, I love that. Yeah, and early pricing is available right now, so check it out. We got an incredible resort in Northwest Bali. So you can't go to Bali and not change. It is the home of just like that beautiful, feminine, flowing, healing, nurturing, kind, compassionate energy. So I'm excited. Okay, Emily, thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you for having me. And thank you guys for being on. And I just would say too, if you guys have any questions for Amy or I, message us like on Instagram, come to our websites, email, because I love to hear, like what questions come up like after we have a conversation like this. And if you have questions about Bali or thinking about coming, reach out to us. Like Amy's a wizard. It's going to be my first time there, but she's a wizard with travel and how to get there. We want to make it easy and supportive so that the whole process can be a gift, getting there too, planning it, all that.
Yeah. And I will put all the links will be in the show notes as well. So thank you
so much. Bye.